Hi everyone. I'm just going to finish up some of the ideas that we didn't get to at the end of class, and I want to just make one more point about a very important event that took place in the fourth year of Jehoiakim's rule, which we were studying in one or two chapters today. So if you look at the flow chart that I gave to you on the bottom half of the sheet, there's a little bit of a history here of Nebuchadnezzar's rise to power. 605 BCE, which is the fourth year, as we've seen, of the reign of Jehoiakim. Nebuchadnezzar rises to power. He fights a major battle with the Egyptian army in a place called Karkamish, which is in the north near the Euphrates River. Where's our map? Okay, all the way up here. Trying to see if I can find it on the map. I don't see it here, but somewhere up here. And the Babylonians deliver a crushing blow to the Egyptians. That's going on in the second passage here. There's actually descriptions of Nebuchadnezzar's rise to power in Perek Mem Vav, Yirmiyahu, Malachim, Bet Perek Chav Daled, which you're going to look at. And they subdue the Egyptians. They capture Ashkelon, which we know is in the south, not too far from the center of the land of Israel, and also areas in Syria. So Bavel is starting to close in on the Jewish kingdom. Eventually, the Egyptian army, which has remained at bay but not defeated, retaliates against Bavel and deals them a great blow. And that's described here in Malachim Bet at the beginning of Perek Chav Daled. Pulling that up over here. And biyamav Allah Nevuchadnezzar melech Bavel vahi lo Yehoiakim eved shalosh shanim ve'yashav ve'yimrod bo. So actually Yehoiakim, for a time, we know initially he was a puppet or an ally with Egypt, but when Nebuchadnezzar started to take over power, Yehoiakim basically became a servant of the Babylonian Empire for 3 years. That was until the Egyptians fought back, as I mentioned over here. In these years, 604 to 601 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar actually kind of left some of the areas that he had captured and went back to the north. This wasn't going to last for too long. He was going to return a few years later to the region, capturing Yehuda, basically putting a stranglehold on the land of Israel. And this is the beginning of the end, which we're going to get to in the final classes next week. So Yehoiakim dies at this time. His Yehoiachin takes over for a very short 3 months, and then the final king Tzidkiyahu, which we description of the end of Perek Chav Daled. So the 2 points I wanted to just make, one which I left off at the end of the class, is we see a number of places where Nebuchadnezzar's rise to power is described in a kind of as part of a divine plan. In Perek Daled Yirmiyahu, it says Allah Aryeh misibucho, a lion has risen from his den. And the Aryeh here says the Radak is Melech Bavel, Zehu Melech Bavel, and the reason why he's called an Aryeh is because nobody can stand up against him. Nebuchadnezzar's Kavash Kol Aratzot, he was conquering all the lands, Lo Amad Ish B'fanav, nobody could stand in front of him. Perish HaMashal L'fanav Mashchikoyim, Misfucho, Hisukato, Shochei Batamid. Okay, so basically we're getting a sense that within the prophet's language and wording, he sees Nebuchadnezzar as somebody who is a tremendous military leader and not somebody that anybody's really going to be able to stand up to. Even more explicit is a statement in Perek Chaf Hei, which we actually referenced at the beginning of the sheet, where we looked at that Rashi who said it was the fourth year that everything was really finalized. And later in the Perek, when Yirmiyahu is giving his nevuah about the end, he says, "Hineni sholeach v'lakachti kol mishpachot tzafon," all the nations of the north, Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel avdi. Here, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, my servant. Okay? And Avdi says, Mitzudat David, one of the commentaries on the Navi, Rotze lomar oseh shlichuti b'davar zeh. he is fulfilling my my service, my shlichut through everything that Nevuchadnezzar is going to carry out. This is a challenging idea to process. Hopefully, we'll think about it a little bit more in the final classes. The last thing I wanted to mention is a passage in Yirmiyahu Perek Lamed Vav, which we don't have the time to really go into in depth, but I just wanted to point out for interest's sake and to kind of round out some of the themes and ideas we've spoken about, is that in the fourth year, Vayiba Shana Revi'it Lo Yehoyakim, there's another chapter that deals with the fourth year of Yehoyakim's reign, which is Perek Lamed Vav in Yirmiyahu. Hayad Davar Zel Yirmiyahu made Hashem Lemor. So God basically tells Yirmiyahu, Kach Lecha Megillat Sefer. He tells him to basically write a Megillah. And he's supposed to write down all of the bad stuff that's going to happen to the Jewish people. Kol Asher Kol Dvarim Asher Dibarti Lecha Yisrael V'Yehuda V'Kol Goyim. Everything that God basically plans for the bad stuff that's going to happen in the future. Ula Yishma'u, maybe they'll hear. And all of this is going on, perhaps, as mentioned earlier, in the final call to tshuva. Really the last opportunity, maybe even before some of the language of Perek Yutet that we looked at in class. And you see here at the end of the pasuk, Leman Yeshuva, they can do tshuva, right? Leman Yeshuva Ishmi their kol ra'av v'salachti lavonam l'chatatam, God will even be willing to forgive. So Yirmiyahu doesn't want to go through this with himself. He calls his prodigy. His name is Baruch ben Neriah. He's a scribe, and he asks him to write it. He's a little bit scared to do it himself. He describes that here in pasuk Hey, Ani Atzur Lo Ochal Lavo Beit Hashem. Yirmiyahu's kind of laying low. He doesn't want to go into the Beit HaMikdash. He's caused enough trouble already, so he asks Baruch ben Neriah to do it for him. Without getting too much into the rest of the chapter, basically, you're welcome to go and look at it. Baruch ben Neriah writes this Megillah, and he goes to the Chatzar Beit Hashem, and he reads it, and there's a lot of people there, and they get very scared. It's in the 5th year, actually, when this goes down. That's here in Pasuk Tet. Kirut Tzom, the people call a fast day. They Nevuchadnezzar is closing in. It's a very scary time. And people are, hearing the message and somehow waking up to the calls of the impending destruction. So the reaction of the people when Baruch ben Neriah reads this Megillah is very very interested, shocked, upset, sad about what they're hearing, but they're taking to it. They're not just ignoring it. What Yirmiyahu really wants is he wants this Megillah to actually get into the king. This is the part that I wanted to focus on. That later in the Perek, the king hears about this Megillah, that it's making an impact, and people are hearing it, and something about whatever's written in the Megillah is scaring the people, and they're actually taking it seriously. And the king wants to know what's in it, so he sends one of his messengers here in Pasuk Kaf Aleph to go and get the Megillah, and he brings it into the king, and he basically reads it to him. Vayikra Yehudi be'oznei HaMelech v'oznei kol Srim. And what happens? V'Hamelech yoshev b'Rechorev, and he reads it. Vayiki kro Yehudi Pasuk Chav Gimel. He starts to read the passages. We're going to get back to this in a second, and he tears it up and he throws it in the fire. So Yehoyakim is not a big fan of anything that Yirmiyahu is going to speak about, and that explains a little bit about why Yirmiyahu was concerned to be the one who would be conveying this message. So we see that Yehoyakim was really not a fan of Yirmiyahu's policies, of Yirmiyahu's ideas, and that's being manifest here in burning this Megillah. What was this Megillah? So the commentaries bring down this Gemara from Moed Katan. I'm just going to pull it up here. I'm going to post it on the homework page. And the Gemara here describes that the Megillah was actually Megillat Eicha, which Yirmiyahu spoke in prophecy, and he told Baruch ben Neriah to write down. And it was the Megillat Eicha, which was already written not one day before, but years before the actual destruction of the Churban, according to this approach. And this is what Yirmiyahu had written down, and this is what Yehoiakim had heard that actually made him very upset. He didn't like to hear the words of Eicha, which we know are very intense and depressing and all about destruction, which didn't even happen yet. And it was for this reason that he basically was not fazed by it, and he right away, threw it out, burned it, and got rid of it. The point I wanted to make on this is, number one, we get a little bit of an insight of Yehoiakim's connection to Yirmiyahu's Nevuah, and number two, we're getting a little bit of an insight into Yehoiakim versus Yoshiyahu. It's been pointed out that if you remember, one of the first stories we learned that Yoshiyahu found the Sefer Torah, right? He found the Megillah, he found the scroll, and what was his reaction? His reaction was fear and scared, and we have to do something. We have to try to change society. We have to, wake people up. And his son was clearly not on the same page. He, mind the pun, he actually was much more interested in pushing away any scary, foreboding, ominous kinds of nevuahs of Yirmiyahu, and that's why he went on this campaign to make sure that this Megillah was burned. So I share this with you kind of as an end note to Yehoiakim's life. We're gonna look at how he died in the next class, and we're going to start to move into the last phase of the reign of the Jewish people and the reign of the kings in the land of Israel. Of course, culminating with Churban Beit HaMikdash, not the happiest of topics, but a very important part of our history and a lot to be learned from that moment itself. Take care.